this regular meeting of the Danbury Board of Education. Will all those in attendance please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The board welcomes public participation and asks that speakers please limit their comments to 3 minutes. Speakers may offer objective comments of school operations and programs that concern them. The board will not permit any expression of personal complaints or defamatory comments about Board of Education personnel and students or against any person connected with the Danbury Public School System. The chair will allow up to 40 minutes for public participation. We will read off the names who signed off on the list. If time permits, we will allow additional people to get to the 40 minutes. Because there are so many people, we will be timing the 3 minutes. So please be brief in consideration of those who are coming behind you. If you are going to speak, please come up to the microphone. Okay. We'll start with Mrs. Steichen. You have the floor.
Hi, my name is Sandy Steichen. I am a sophomore at Danbury High School, and I'd like to talk to you about the budget concerns. News about the lower requested amount for the school budget has been in the forefront of our minds. We all know cuts may be deep and numerous. What I don't understand is why administrative cuts were not the first to be mentioned to the press. Why? It is a time to dig deep and evaluate all possible areas of duplication and unnecessary spending. Off the top of my head, I can think of about half a dozen administrative areas to investigate reducing prior to taking resources out of our children's hands. How about consultants, special committees, contractual reductions, elimination of job duplication, which exists in some of the highest paid administrative positions in our district, media specialist, which is on the budget for $93,000, and paid workshops, which are mandatory that the teachers attend, incurring costs for consultants and substitute teachers. This week alone, for just one day of a workshop for DHS, it cost us $3,000, just for the substitute teachers. There will be a total of 20 workshops with 30 teachers at each workshop for a total of $60,000. And let me remind you that this is above and beyond 4 additional PPD days that we have already allocated. Once again, the administration of the school district in their public communication focuses on cutting the home resources like textbook budget, my favorite topic. Has anyone looked at the photocopy budget since they've stopped handing out textbooks and not keeping resources for taking home? I don't know how many textbooks we could have purchased with that. These are all the types of expenditures that we as the parents would like the BOE to address first. As administration stated in the newspaper, and I quote, "How do we do the right thing for our children?" unquote. And I say, when you cut administrative and not classes, teachers, or at-home resources for students, take politics out and put our children's education first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Steichen, for your participation this evening. Next up is Wendy Gerston. You have the floor.
Hello, my name is Wendy Gerston. I understand that the proposed budget cuts are mostly what is on the table for tonight's discussion, but I would like to speak tonight about the proposed uniform policy in middle schools, as well as the proposed item to be cut from the budget. I'll start with the uniforms. While I believe the idea is well-intentioned and may sound good on paper, in reality I do not believe it has been a well-executed and well-thought-out plan. There are still so many questions which are unanswered about this proposed policy, from what it will consist of in terms of long sleeve, short sleeve, colors, sweaters, etc., to enforcement. From my understanding, based on PTO meetings, newspaper articles in the News Times and the Danbury Patch, and instant alerts, in reality, the impracticality of putting this uniform policy into place is why I respectfully ask the board to vote no. Number one, the intent is to instill a feeling of unity. However, how can a sense of unity be instilled when 1/3 to 1/2 of the students are not wearing the uniform? Number 2, the intent is to level the playing field and prevent designer clothing. However, the plan is to wear a certain color, which can be purchased anywhere, so it doesn't fix the issue of designer clothing. You can still have someone with a designer clothing and someone who bought their shirt at Walmart, and it doesn't change it. So what would be the point? Number 3, proposed uniform of jeans is, in my opinion, a dress code. Jeans are not a uniform. We already have a dress code. Moreover, it does not eliminate the designer element as mentioned before, and therefore still does not accomplish its intent. Also, it does not fix the issue of jeans being worn down to the knees with holes, etc. Further, it allows for no flexibility for warmer weather in terms of shorts, skirts, capris, etc. Number 4, given that approximately half of the students in the district are on free and reduced lunch, how are those students going to purchase uniforms? Are we now going to be in the business of clothing potentially half the student population? This would seem absurd at any time, but certainly more so on a night when we are here to discuss eliminating French and many of the other budget cuts on the table. Number 5, in addition, while the numbers may not materially alter the results of the surveys which were done, there are several items which could clearly taint the results. A, the numbers that I've seen referenced in terms of those in favor do not seem to add up correctly to the basic numbers in the student population. B, I did not get a vote. While I was expecting the call that night, I was not able to be home at that time. I thought the survey would call my cell phone or my husband's as it had for the February break survey. It never called me back. However, my neighbor voted 3 times. C, each time I've seen references to the uniform when asked to vote has been a different definition of the uniform. In fact, in your the board's March 23rd minutes, it refers to khaki pants for bottoms and not jeans. It makes one wonder about a possible bait and switch or just misinformation that could possibly sway a vote for or against. So is it truly 2/3, which is a majority but not an overwhelming majority, or is it 2/3 of the people who actually voted? Number 6, what about the staff? Will they be required to wear a uniform? Number 7, if this uniform policy is not going to be mandated, what is the point of adopting it?
Thank you, Mrs. Gersten. Your time's expired.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Kevin Hannon, you're next. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the board for being in attendance tonight. It's disappointing to see that you don't have 100% attendance this evening on such an important meeting. I know the board is considering making the May 27th PT Day an instructional day for Millridge Primary and Rogers Park. I'd like the board to think about making it an instructional day for all schools so students and staff won't have to work as late in June, since one of the 2 February days that you had scheduled for makeup was also snowed out. If there's a potential cost savings there, I think it should be investigated. I know many members of the board are aware, I don't know about the audience, but I would like to see full-day kindergarten available to every child in our district. However, in our current situation, we don't have the space in our schools to physically accommodate those students. The city needs to work with the board to find a solution to that. Otherwise, Danbury will be forced to offer half-day kindergarten, not just due to budget constraints, but due to space constraints. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hannon. Christopher Margaret's.
Hi, my name is Christopher Marvis, and I'm a 7th grader at Broadview Middle School. I would like to address the cuts in world language and in other parts of Broadview. World language is very important. It's my first year of taking it. And this day and age, having a world language is very important because most people do speak 2 or 3 languages. So not having that opportunity would hurt a bunch of people in Danbury that other kids from other places would not be able to have. Also, tech ed is on the chopping block, which would be very bad, because in this day and age, everybody needs to know how to use computers and everything, and if you don't have that, then we'll just fall behind. Also, art, it wouldn't be fair, because other kids like to draw, and other kids might not like to learn a language, so we need to keep that. And band, there is a big number of kids who know how to use an instrument. It helps their SAT scores and also helps their scores on CMTs, and I know that CMTs help the budget of Danbury. So if we have higher scores on the budget for Danbury, then we'll have more money for stuff like that. So, thank you.
Laura Petroselli.
Good evening. I didn't come here, I wasn't going to speak, but my son insisted that I speak, so I'm speaking. I have 3 children in the Danbury system. I'm also a first grade teacher at Shelter Rock School. The first thing I'd like to address, I don't have anything prepared, is half-day kindergarten. Being a first grade teacher, I can tell right away who's been in half-day kindergarten and who's been in full-day kindergarten. Especially when they start the first few weeks of school, those are the children that can read. They have been in full-day kindergarten. They are not tired. They are prepared for a full day of school. Yes, the ones that are sleepy by 10 o'clock and by 2 o'clock are my half-day kindergartners. They can hardly read and they can hardly write. I spend most of my time helping those children. Now that you've implemented Reader's Workshop and Writer's Workshop, and now including DRAs, you're imposing on that, I'm just curious how you're going to fit that into a kindergarten half-day program, because it's not going to work and it's going to be very difficult. And as a first grade teacher, I can tell you it's going to be more challenging. Everywhere else around our area, I see they're having full-day kindergarten. Even New Milford's putting in full-day kindergarten, and they're working with a smaller budget than we are. I really have to insist as a first grade teacher not to take away full-day kindergarten. We've got to look at implementing full-day kindergarten all the way around, not just for some children. It's really not fair. So that's my first thing about the kindergarten. Second is I have a special ed student here at Broadview. She's in 7th grade, and she's doing very well. I have to admit that I was very nervous having the child here at the middle school, but I am no longer nervous. She is doing phenomenal. My fear is when she gets to the high school. I have heard horrible things that are going to be happening at the high school with special ed. I think it's sad that that's the first place you want to cut is special ed. That's not where you need to cut. You need to cut at the admin level. You need to cut people who've already retired, you are paying as consultants. You're paying 6 figures. That's a lot of money, as far as I'm concerned, for people who've already done the job. They said they're going to retire, and in the newspaper it says, we're not replacing those jobs, but yes, you are. You're using them as consultants. I could use a phrase that my father would say, but I think I might refrain from saying it. I might just say, you need to decide, are we paying these people, or are we filling the position, or are we abandoning the position? There's a lot of duplication of effort, and it's a lot of money. That's teacher money, that's para money, that's money for special ed. Please don't cut special ed. You've got a lot of kids in special ed, and there's more coming. So that's the last place you need to look. The last thing I want to address is just extra expenditures. I know that Shelter Rock, we have a tight budget on paper. We have to use our own paper in a sense as an allocation per teacher. There's no paper in the hallway, so we have to be accountable for our paper.
Thank you, Mrs. Petroselli. Your time's expired. Thank you. Take our motion.
My name is Jay Wanamocha, and I'm an 8th grader at Rogers Park in the Exploration Academy, and I'm here to address the budget cuts you are taking to world language. First of all, I just came back from a field trip today in Times Square and was with Spanish 2, the 8th grade, and I had a really nice experience seeing the different culture that the Spanish cultures have to offer to the world, and it really opened my eyes. When I was in 6th grade, I did this 30-day trial thingy of Spanish, and when I went in there, I thought it was going to be hard, I wasn't going to like it, and when I was going to first go in, I thought I was going to like it, but after my 30 days, I realized that it was really nice, and it is a good thing for me to learn another language, a culture. And I went in the 7th grade in Spanish 1, and I learned the basic words, and I really enjoyed it. I loved my teachers, I loved the culture, and I just loved it. And now I'm still in Spanish, this time Spanish 2, and I enjoy it. I like all the teachers, I like the culture. Now, I think it is really important because our society today is evolving into different languages and cultures, and I think it's really important for us to learn some of their language so we can communicate as one. And I think it is really important, and I think you shouldn't cut any Spanish because it's a really important asset, not to only us, but to everyone in the community.
Participation in the council.
Good evening, how are you tonight? My concern tonight is the kindergarten. I have 3 children, 1 in high school, 2 in elementary. Last year I discussed all of that. This year I need to hone in on the kindergarten. It's my last one. Registered her the other week and was told flat out, no full day kindergarten. All right. But we have the wraparound program. Great. But the wraparound program cannot support all of the children in Moore Street. That's going to be a lottery. So now I'm faced with, come August, whenever they do the lottery, to find out whether or not my child has somewhere to go for the other half of the day, or go ahead and pull her out of the public school system and put her somewhere where she can. If I do that, now there's going to be another strain, which I'm sure with some of the other parents, on the Care for Kids system. The one bit of assistance we can get to help pay for some of these additional costs, you can have more people flooding that. If there's no money in the state, there's no money in the state. Some kids are going to be left at home. Parents are going to have to quit work, something. Jobs going to be so flexible. We really need to continue either with the full day kindergarten, and that's the first grade.
Before we hear some words from the administration, we'll just point out where we are in the process. Back in February, the board approved an increase of just over $4 million. The increase that was passed by the board was to carry on the existing programs going forward. I think we can all say even that is a stretch, given the increasing enrollment that we're facing in the district. Looking over the past several years, we're up 100 to 200 students every year over the past several years. So the budget that was presented is a bare bones, try to keep all the programs that we have and move them 1 year ahead. That's in the face of pretty significant projected cost increases on the part of our healthcare provider and some other costs. So this time around, salary costs really weren't the major driver of what the projected increases are. But whether they come from salaries or from bus contracts or from healthcare providers, that all means the same. $1 added to the budget would have to mean something else comes out if we didn't get an increase funded by the city. So we passed the budget in February that took the programs ahead to next year. Understanding that the city's in a pretty significant financial downturn, as is the state. We were waiting to see what took place there. And so now we're left with cuts both from the city side and from the state side. The state cut our priority grant funding by $250,000, and the city has lowered our request on the city budget side down to $1 million increase. So that leaves us with about a $3.5 million gap that we need to find, assuming the council will pass what's been proposed. And so that action is yet to come. But the superintendent, the cabinet, the staff has been at work to understanding that this might be a possibility, to see what we need to do to meet the number that we're ultimately going to get. What I'll do now is turn the floor over to Mr. Ginelli, who is the co-chair of our Finance Committee. The Finance Committee met the day after the mayor's budget presentation, and there was an initial discussion of those possibilities at the meeting last week, I believe. So Mr. Ginelli will describe the Finance Committee's meeting, and followed by the administration.
Thank you. We had anticipated some bad news, and therefore we had called the Finance Committee for April 6th, knowing it was the day after we received the information from the mayor as to the budget cuts. At the Finance Committee meeting, we were presented with the list as published and as you've seen, and we had some discussion on it. But because of the seriousness of these particular cuts, numbers don't really mean anything. It means something to me because I'm a financial person. I think to the average person, it just means that the board has done something to minimize the gap. I suggested to the superintendent and his staff that the complexity of what's happening and the seriousness of what we're doing today, tomorrow, and until we have to finally adopt the budget, that he prepare the impact, the implications as to what these cuts mean on the educational quality to the kids of our city. And to make it known to the parents, the children, and everybody else in the community what this is going to affect. So it was the conclusion of the Finance Committee that with that presentation to the full board, that we would have a discussion. Generally, the Finance Committee recommends certain things to the board, so we don't have to go through a lot of discussion. On a personal note, I do want to tell you, last year I mentioned, and I want to caution you, that I can't predict when the economy is going to turn around, but I can tell you at a conservative number that our costs, not only for the next fiscal year, but probably for the next 2 fiscal years, will probably be in a range of $3.5 to $4 million on a conservative number, just based on overhead costs of insurance, fuels, and other contracts, and perhaps even with escalations of union contracts. In the event the city does not come out of its problem at that point, we are going to be back here with the same kind of cuts. So just forecast and look ahead. What another $3 million per year or $6 million going ahead in the next 2 years after this cycle is going to do to your education system? How much can this handle, and what are we chiseling away at? So Mr. Maloney had mentioned we have to think about the future. That's what you got to think about. What we're doing right now is band-aiding something that we're looking at to take care of the current year. But it's more drastic going ahead. And then look at the future beyond that in terms of what is it going to get us, or when is it going to turn around, and how much money is it going to cost us to make up what we have lost. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Now I'd like to turn the discussion over to Dr. Pasquarella, our superintendent of schools, who has a presentation for us. You can move if you wish to the back. There'll be a presentation up on the screen behind it.
I wouldn't go this way because it's aligned. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. As we sat up there, I mean, I applauded for everyone here. This is not what we want to do. We're not in the business to cut the programs. I think someone said at the end, why is it affecting the middle school? One of the things that we did, we kept all the suggestions from last year. This year, I also had on the website, we had suggestions, and I'll show you about the discretionary decisions that we can make for the cuts. But one of the things that we said straight up is, cutting so drastically the last 2 years that we really have to look at non-mandated programs. So if you're kind of wondering why, you have to kind of use that lens and protect our core areas. So up here, when we started this very beginning in October, we told parents back then, that you, in looking at our budget through a lens, we had to state what was the top priority and what was mission critical. And for us, the reading, math, the language, all of that is critical. That is not to say, I couldn't be an educator if I could say world language isn't part of it. Absolutely is. But mandatory time and things that we have to put forward for students come to the area of the traditional subject matter, particularly at the elementary to the 8th grade. At the secondary level, we have to look at our graduation requirements. You can't offer something to young students and tell them they need to graduate and then not be there. We can't do that. So what we're proposing to the board as well is they accelerated the graduation requirements 2 years ahead of what the state was going to do. One of my recommendations is to stop that as well, not to implement any new requirements that may cost us more money in electives. It's going to be hard enough to offer what we have right now for graduation requirements. So as we look at the very important address the student support, supplement, extracurricular programs, operations, supplies, materials, equipment. If you look at our budget, I thank the teachers that are here and the union that are here. They really took a zero for next year. They're not getting an increase. The administrators as well are not receiving an increase. The cabinet, no one's receiving an increase. That's not big news, but that did take an effort on both parts, recognizing we're in kind of tough times. So that has helped us. The other thing that's helped us tremendously is benefits. We had anticipated about 12% increase. I think we're down to 5%. I guess we're much healthier this year when they did the calculations, which is the good news. So that helped us immensely by keeping some programs. What we tried to do tonight, and the board had asked, okay, if you do this, we don't know it's bad, but how bad is it? There are some things said here today. You have to understand that all of our travel has been cut, all of that is gone, and what we have been doing is trying to have what we call in-building kinds of activities, which does cost some money. And we had to maintain some of those things for professional development. We also have issues with materials that we have to look at. But if you look at our elementary reading math specialists, cuts within the last 3 years, $3 million bill. The specialists that we had 5,100 students now, we had 4,900 students back then, and we have less specialists. So what we did was 2 years ago, we cut the specialists in half. The state took a fund away from us. We had to remove a literacy person, and anybody that walks around the elementary school could notice the hard work that our teachers go through and teach them what we call the balanced literacy approach. It's hard work, and they had literacy people helping them. We had to cut that as well. So we didn't feel justified in eliminating any of our literacy support that the teachers have at the K-5 level. So we let it stay in the budget, along with our math specialists. Did you want to roll that some more? Administrative cuts, there are some standards out there, about one to every 500, every 600, in terms of how many administrators assigned to students. We here in the district are growing. That's another challenge that we had. Most of Fairfield County is going the other way. We are accelerating our growth. We're going to talk about that later on as well. But we had at one point 57 administrators, 52 administrators for 9,800. We are now 34 administrators for 10,400 students. That's simply to say we've had the economized industry has done it. It's not that everybody's just doing more, and that's what we had to do. We took advantage of retirements, not filling positions. There was a question before, well, are you filling position or not filling position? Well, you know what happens if you have neighbors that are executives or working in industry, they retire, go away, and then they get hired back at a lower rate. We're looking at the same thing. Someone leaves us, we can hire them back at a lower rate. It helps us. We can do it. We try to do that. So we model some of the practices in business by doing that. We also, at the cabinet level, reduced the assistant superintendent, Dr. Walewski, retired, so we didn't replace that position as well. So that's been eliminated. Everybody keeps talking about discretionary. You know, fuel is not discretionary anymore. The paper, everything that we have, it seems to be all-encompassing. The tipping point for what we have to do is incredible. There is not much. There's only 2.5% of discretionary funds of about $114 million. It's not much. And when you look at the fuel in there and the rest, it even becomes less. So, you know, the pencils and the papers doesn't really work. It really comes down to bodies. I think this community has done its fair share. 3 years ago when we started this austerity budget of reducing, And the board kept saying, keep teachers, keep teachers, keep teachers, and we got that. But now it's about, it's about bodies. When people aren't getting raises, benefits are down, that's not really what's really presenting the biggest challenge. You're going to have to reduce people. Fred Smarhant, you have these youngsters up here saying, I love what you're doing, you're giving us less. Well, we don't want to do that. But in fact, if it's discretionary in terms of non-mandated area, that's why it's on the block, that's why the board's looking at it. That would be the only reason why they're looking at it. 97.5 in non-discretionary funds. You want to roll that up, Bill? Can you roll it up? Huh? Okay, how about the impact then? All right, do you have the next part? Okay. Here are the cost reductions. So what we tried to do is put down the recommendation, and I'm going to stress, these are recommendations, they can change. They're the decision makers up there. We will not know our budget for sure until May 2nd, May 3rd?
The first Tuesday in May.
The first Tuesday in May, that's when we'll be told exactly what our budget is going to be. This is, tomorrow night, we meet with the City Council Subcommittee to talk about this very thing here, in terms of what impact of the $1 million. So if you start with elimination of full-day kindergarten, and some years ago, the board put in a full-day kindergarten. There's one full-day kindergarten at each building, and by lottery. It's an open lottery. It had been done at one time by need. That was, I guess, discriminatory, so then they went to an open lottery. So at every school, there's at least one. In some cases, there's two if people have Title I money, and they're able to run that program. There might be two at a few schools. But what we're looking at last year, we cut the aides, which we felt were all important. It wasn't, in fact, that it wasn't important. It's just that we felt keeping full-day kindergarten for one section was more important. This year, we're looking at, if you look at the history of universal kindergarten all day by fall of 2011, kindergarten class sizes have been increased from 20 to 22. All the kindergarten paraprofessionals were eliminated last year, leaving one adult to manage the classes. And the teacher here is right. Those folks, those youngsters at full-day kindergarten, you can tell them first grade. That's why 3 years ago, we tried to have full-day kindergarten for everyone. We knew one of our challenges, we didn't have enough room. So we were going to try to phase it and try 2 sections at every building and see if we're able to do that by putting the art on the wheel and other things. Now, we're down to saying everybody just gets half-day kindergarten. That's pretty severe for us, wanting that full-day kindergarten as a goal. That was a board goal and our goal. So what is it? We're going to cut 11 full-day kindergarten programs, resulting in a loss of 7,200 hours of instruction time and enrichment activities for about 200 plus students. We roughly have about 900, about 900 kindergarten in the district. So it's going to impact 200 students. Textbooks, we had an issue this year. We'll be cutting it down to $50,000. No new textbooks to support the 48 new curriculums, guides. And good question, what about if you duplicate? That's an issue, and I can't say it isn't. And we're watching that because we're reducing paper for duplication. English, social studies, science, math at the middle school and high school, extremely limited materials for classroom reading libraries at the elementary school. Use of remaining funds to cover lost or damaged books, class sets instead of individual books in some classes, textbooks provided for students, only for students who do not have computers at home. So the last 17 reading teachers have been cut within the past 4 years. Classroom reading libraries have been implemented in part to help reduce the direct impact of students from the loss while also providing additional literacy. As we're cutting the materials, as we have a balanced literacy approach, we're saying you have to have materials for your youngsters, and we can't even provide that for our teachers, and that's not good. The Title I schools have materials the way it's situated, and they're supposed to have it, and we're supposed to be provided to our regular programs, and we have not been able to do that at the degree that we need to do that. So we have, it's the kind of dichotomy. We do have a dual system. The Title I schools are getting more materials by law, they're getting them, and our regular programs are not. Now here's a tough one, elimination of technology. You know, we know middle school is experimental. You would like to have a full complement of experiences for youngsters. We talked one year here about not even having by semester or by year, to try to have them by semester, so students have what they call a selective elective. But we stayed with a pretty traditional model, and we kept our programs intact somewhat. We cut them last year as well, but we do have technology. The coming year, with our increased numbers in 7th and 8th grade, we'll have access to world language. Fewer students will have access to world language if we do move ahead and eliminate our French program in the middle school. Approximately 6% of the 7th graders will spend additional marking period in study halls. About 57, almost 6% of the 8th graders will spend additional marking period in study halls. 6th graders will be in study halls. The 22 days per year that we had in 6th grade would be eliminated. It's a less common planning for teachers. Right now, we have a middle school. The middle school is, it's not like a junior high in a lot of ways, in terms of the way the content's presented. In addition, our teachers are in teams. And one of the things that are key is that they plan together. We think we're going to have problems doing that by cutting these programs. The teachers will not have the ability to team together and meet, which is not a good thing. Family and consumer science was eliminated last year. World language was reduced. The gifted program was reduced to an after-school program, serving a significantly smaller number of students. You know, if any of these things come to fruition, one of the things with the world language, I think we'd have an obligation to the French students that take in 7th grade that we offer some to them in 8th grade. So we'd have to work that out somehow. But we would not have it at 7th grade. So that would be something that we would have to work out with our middle school principals. Elimination of 3 teaching positions at the high school. And we say special education elective. Dr. Rossi is here. What we told him to do is he would have to look at his courses. I mean, if there are enough students with IEPs, you can't cut the special education. You just can't do that. We were just looking at some numbers. We did this last month. The youngsters are just beginning to select their courses, and the parents are going through their IEPs. But our goal is to try to reduce at least 3 teachers at the high school. We're only reducing because we're backing in a number. We're not making very good educational decisions here. Just understand that. We have a number that we have to back into, and we're looking at how we can apply it. So Dr. Rossi and Dr. Glass and Dr. Martins and the department chairman are looking at the courses, and if they're low courses and they can't go, they'll be eliminated. It might not be special ed. It may not be any of these up here, but some other elective areas. But they have to reduce 3 areas, and they're going to have to be able to look at where we can do that. Reduce service for special needs students, less elective options for students, increase the number of study halls. I'm going to say something really horrible right now. How many have high school students here? Well, we go up to that high school, and we have that big cafeteria. There's about 700 kids, 7 in the morning, in study halls now, because we can't offer the things that we want. And the middle school principals know we fought for a few years to eliminate all study halls at the middle school, and to give them something while they're here. Now we're increasing them. Not a good thing, not what we want to do. But again, we're sort of stuck in making some decision to meet our budget. Elimination of the 2 guidance counselors at the middle and high school. That means a total of 2 middle school level ratio of students increases from 366 to 1 to 457 to 1. High school level currently has 275 to 1 and will increase to 300 to 1. There are standards there, but it's very difficult to run the school with one less counselor. It may not seem like much, but they do spend a lot of time. They do a lot of work. They are very meaningful. The last 2 years in the budget, we didn't eliminate counselors. We stayed away from that, but this time we felt that we had to at least look at the counselors and make a recommendation to reduce them, at least 2. So the way it would work, the high school would lose 1, the middle school will share 1, so they have 2.5 and 2.5. So it'd be 1 person going between the 2 buildings here. Elimination of the following administrative positions: assistant superintendent, curriculum administrator for fine applied arts, administrator for reach and endeavor programs. That's a special program that we started 3 years ago. We would not fill the director of information services. Reduction in the following positions: director of special services. We have an opportunity the board can consider. We are a school in the category where we can have someone who retires return. If we decide to do that, if we have a person who will retire, we can have them return and hire them for a year. If that's the case, we would do it at less than full-time. So we would say there would be a savings if we're able to do that because we're a school district in need of improvement. Athletic director, we would reduce the number of days from 225 to 206. We would not fill the guidance department head at the high school. Do not fill the technology system analyst that opened up this year. We would not fill that for next year. We would not fill the elementary school psychologist position. The elimination of 3 paraprofessionals, elimination of 2 secretaries, and we would cut the professional development program that we have for teachers and administrators from $130,000 to $34,000. If you look to the right, to the middle, the duties and responsibilities of deputy superintendent have doubled, significantly less. There hasn't been any compensation for that. The day-to-day supervision support for the district technology program, it's multi-million-dollar technology infrastructure. There's less ongoing supervision of special ed if we do that. Less supervision of guidance for art, music, business, education, family, consumer ed, and science. We also will have less people at our alternative school and students that are expelled. We're going to have to figure out how we're going to supervise that. And there'll be less art, music, psychology, support service in the elementary schools if we were to do that. By eliminating some of the fine arts at the elementary school. To the right, 53 administrators in 2008 cut to 34. District-wide instruction leaders cut for about 60%. You want to go up? If you look at the notes, class-side guidance of 22 for kindergarten, first grade, 25 for second grade. 5th grade may have to increase depending on the percent that we have that comes in. Overall class-side guidelines 2 years ago were 20 for kindergarten through grade 2, 25 for grade 3, and 5. Some courses at the high school level will not be offered if they require additional staffing and if they have limited enrollment. As I said, the following groups received a 0, the paras, the secretaries, superintendent, teachers, administrators, I believe the custodians as well, right? Did they not? Just about everyone? So, in closing, I know it's horrific, and I know it's very hard for this board because this board does not want to do this. But at this point, unless we receive more funds from the city, and as Irving talked about, they have their challenges. We're faced with making a decision other than that 2.5% to make our cuts. And these are programs that are not, quote, required programs that we have an opportunity to reduce. Do they impact youngsters negatively? Absolutely. Are you going to have a less of a program? Absolutely. You're going to have more kids in study halls? Yes, you are. You're going to have parents and students without materials? Yes, you are. And we can thank the teachers that keep going out and buying materials and parents to buy more materials because we can't supply it. We just can't do it. I mean, it's tough enough to open the doors and get a teacher in front of a classroom, and we just can't staff them at the level that we need to staff them. I'll have Bill, you have some comments?
Thank you. Just to punctuate a little bit what the superintendent said, when he talks about the cabinet, he's referring to Deputy Superintendent position, my position, Human Resources Director, Kim Thompson's position, Elio Longo, who cannot be here tonight, Director of Finance, and a part-time Director of Special Services. That's the team that put this together. I can tell you all of us are parents, all of us are taxpayers, all of us are educators. When we went back to what we really needed to focus on, you look at these 3 concentric circles, that mission critical, you really don't have a school system if you don't have reading, writing, and math. Basic skills areas. Clearly, that's not enough for a school system, not in the 21st century. If you go to the yellow circle, those top priorities, we have to have those by law. They're non-negotiable. Educational law says either you choose to do it or not. If you choose not to do it, you're out of compliance with state and federal law. There are obviously penalties. So we're left with the blue circle that allows us to look at areas, or forces us to look at areas that fall within that blue slice of the pie. 97.5%, we have no ability to move. So that drives us to places where we don't want to go. as educators, and just a quick punctuation on a couple of points. I sat with Sal and most of the members of the board that are here today. Back when we did the 5-year goals for the board, we were at a retreat for a day, and we came out with a vision statement that said we would have universal full-day kindergarten. And I heard a number of speakers speak to that. That was our vision. Every single child in Danbury would have a full-day kindergarten program. And we had actually figured out how to staff those rooms and where to put the kids based on where we were back 4 or 5 years ago. So the fact of us putting on this document that we have completely reversed our vision is horrible for us, and we recognize it's horrible for you. We have traditionally had about $250,000 for a budget. Other school systems our size have as high as $10 million for budgets. We're textbook budgets, not total budgets. $10 million for a textbook budget for a city our size. Is it high? Yes, it is. Is it particularly low? No, not necessarily. That's about the range. Folks have said, why don't you switch to online textbooks? We can do that. However, the cost of going to an online book is almost identical to a traditional textbook. The difference is that that online book is online, so it's updated instantly whenever anything changes, and there are a lot of supplemental materials that come with it. Kids can access those at home if you have technology. If you don't have technology, it really becomes problematic. We have been trying to build our programs. As Sal said, the middle schools are middle schools because they have rich electives and there are opportunities for teachers to get together and plan and talk about the needs of children. Our high school has traditionally prided itself on having a tremendously rich array of electives. As we were looking at the world language program, going from French and Spanish a number of years ago in a small Italian program, we now have a full Italian program in Mandarin. And we were looking to add additional languages such as Arabic languages. So the idea of cutting middle school French, in essence, over the years, if that happens, we will eliminate our high school French program because there will be no feeder program. I want you to know as we go through these, we are fully cognizant of what we're doing, and it's absolutely horrible. They're the worst days we've ever spent as a team. We are trying to do less, more with less. We heard a couple speakers say, which folks have said in the past few years, cut administrators. You've seen the graphic. 60% of our central office administrators have been cut, yet we've produced 48 new curriculum guides because we were significantly behind, because at that time we were considered to be understaffed. We're dramatically understaffed. We have 40% of the staff we had before, yet we're producing as much as we did before and actually a little bit more. How? Because our folks are working for free on the weekends. That's just the way they're doing it. Last piece I just want to punctuate is the professional development account. There was someone made a statement, why does the Danbury Public Schools have a $3 million professional development account? And we have no idea where that came from last year. In reality, it's $130,000 cut back to $34,000. What do you do with $34,000, especially when one or two of the speakers spoke about the subs and the cost for consultants? Those consultants that were mentioned tonight were paid for by external funds. They were not paid by Danbury taxpayers, let me put it that way. The Title III bilingual grant covered the substitute costs. They covered the cost of the trainers from out of the district. There was no cost, again, to the Danbury Public Schools or the Danbury taxpayers. We have tried to defer all costs to external funding sources, and where we couldn't, if you look over here, I'm not sure if you can really see it. I know the screen, by the way, is a little bit fuzzy. It's because the machine is mounted on the ceiling. You can't get to it. One thing that makes the school system vibrant is the opportunity for the educational team to go and get trained constantly, because educational research changes constantly as new studies are conducted, and pedagogy, which is the science of instruction, is constantly changing. We're constantly working at our craft. If you went to a hospital and the physician said, he or she said, I haven't been gone through any training in the past 10 years, you might want to think about going to a different surgeon or or cardiologist, etc. We're saying to our folks, there is no training. We have no money to cover the substitute costs, even if the training is free. And some of the State Department of Education training and Special Education Resource Center in Connecticut, the training is for free. We can't let our people go because we don't have money to cover the sub-costs. Bottom line with all this, we were given almost an impossible task. We did not want to make one cut that you see tonight and that we're suggesting to the board. We have run scenario after scenario after scenario, all through the days, over the weekends, through the evenings, trying to come up with cuts that at least would allow our core programs to stay intact. And those programs, again, are outlined in the red circle and the yellow circle. Keep at least the basic skills so we still have a school system and adhere to all state and federal programs and contracts. And adhering to our contracts, you saw the list of folks. Everybody is coming in taking zeros. So, and we're all, we have families where we have mortgages, we have college expenses, so on and so forth. But the groups, for the most part, have come in through negotiations saying, we recognize we're in tough times, so no pay raise for us. Are those folks, are they members of the cabinet? Are we martyrs? Absolutely not. Of course not. It's just what you do in times like this. So that for us was not even a conversation point. It simply was we needed to start there and then go more deeply into our programs. Closing out, at least on my part, turning it back over to Sal or to the board, these are all possibilities. Nothing is cast in stone right now. There was a statement made earlier where I was told that I didn't have full-day kindergarten. We have not notified any parents. What we're saying is if the Board of Education does in fact say this is one option we want to consider, and I just need to put a little sharper point on that in a minute, then that will become cast in stone because the Board practice, because the Board has voted on this. The reason that we don't have a great comfort level about each school, 11 schools having a full-day kindergarten program, and you heard Mr. Maloney and a number of other folks speak about the power of preschool. We have kids who come to us with no preschool education, or they come with preschool experiences that have been relegated to, in some cases just because of finances, or an inability to get into a federally funded program. Somebody in the neighborhood, maybe a grandmother, says, I'll take the 10 kids from our building or from the few houses around us, and they can stay with me during the day at no cost or very little cost, and it provides us childcare. But that's very different than going through a program such as Head Start, where you have certified programs. You heard Mr. Maloney say that ours has just been nationally recognized, one of the best in the country. If we were allowed to take the kids who did not have any preschool experience and put those youngsters into full-day K programs, while the half-day K programs were left for the kids who had quality preschool experience, we would start to at least balance the playing field. As Mrs. Petroselli said, first grade teachers, you can tell who has had pre-K and who has not. We have a huge achievement gap in Danbury. We're trying to close that gap through every strategy that we can use. In this case, it's going contrary to common sense. It's going contrary to good educational practice. But the bottom line for us, and I'll close with this, we came in with a flat-funded budget of $4.2 million, recognizing in these tough times with people losing their homes, people not being able to find work, doing having many more tasks and responsibilities with no increase in salary, commensurate with the increases in their responsibilities. We get all that. We had professional and ethical right and responsibility to come to the city and say, this is what we need to run the school systems as they currently are operated. When we go from 4.2 million down to, in effect, 750,000 because of that $250,000 cut to one of our grants, you just can't keep everything you had before. So the cabinet has come together and we tried to make the best of a really bad situation, give it to the board to do their due diligence. Our hunch, they'll send us back to the drawing board, especially based on the input that we had tonight. And we will continue to work through this process. But at the end of the year, when we finally adopt the budget, we will not have the same school system next year that we have this year. There simply is no way around that harsh reality.
And the board, the jobs fund that we got from Washington this year, we added the 7 teachers this year. We banked the other half of the money. Of course, we received $1.2 million. That money is part of this. So just next year, just know that we have to make up for that because those teachers are on this budget this year. It's no cost to us in essence because we use that grant money. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pasquarello. Before we open it up to board discussion, I just want to open the discussion with a couple of comments on what we've just heard. And none of it is very good at all. None of what we heard over the last couple of years has been very good. This is just the latest in a series of cutting that's been going on, where one year we'll cut one program and another year we'll cut another program. We need the lights back on. We need the lights back on.
We need to.
Yeah.
Angelo, can you turn these lights on, please?
And I can remember as far back as 4 or 5 years ago, when times were better, where the board tried to add kindergarten sections, add a regular refreshment of technology, and off the bat, because those things were new, because of other cost increases, those things were pulled off the table. And so we're now in year 4, year 5, even though the downturn has really hit hard the last 2 or 3 years, the district is seeing the compounded impact of the last 5 years of the beginning and now the full-blown economic downturn. There's not much sunny sky ahead. And I would tell you, I want to echo the sentiments of everyone who spoke, the administrators, but in a little bit stronger language. As the board chair, as a taxpayer, as a homeowner, and most importantly as a parent of students at every level of this district starting next year, that this is an unacceptable situation. The quality of the system, we're starting to see decline as a result of the resources that are becoming more and more limited. And now we're at the point where we're going to spend more money to take out the garbage than textbooks. So we've kind of reached a point that requires the community to kind of band together. Again, the money simply doesn't exist. So, we're trying to work with the city council and the mayor as much as possible to get every possible funding stream to the school district. But that's not the only source of funding that's affecting us. It's been said several times in several meetings that at the rate we're going, we're turning into a city district like Bridgeport or some of the other cities. But I would tell you that it's actually worse than that, because cities like Bridgeport and New Britain, et cetera, get the benefit of tens of millions of dollars of extra state funding, and in the case of New Britain, for the same school population. Where our town has a very similar economic makeup. We have almost half of our students on free lunch, and there are other districts around the state that are getting tens of millions of dollars. And by the way, I speak to some of these board chairs occasionally in Britain and elsewhere. They're facing similar problems, so I would invite them to come here and take a look at what's happening, because I wish we had the $50 million that New Britain has. But the underlying problem there is not just the funding level at the city level and the city's tax base, which obviously cannot afford it, but at the state level as well. We have a funding system that's broken, and we have no leadership at the state level that wishes to change that. Perhaps they don't have the will to change it. Perhaps they don't want to change it because it would disadvantage their own districts. But it's left to us in our community to kind of stand up for what we need in our school district. And that requires the community as a whole. I mentioned that before, in public participation. We've suffered over the last several years with a lack of public attendance, public support, and even sometimes board support for some of the work that we're trying to do. And that has to change, because if it doesn't, there's going to be no impetus to change anything, and the direction we're headed in is going to continue, and that's just simply unacceptable. So I would suggest, in the past, my experience with the school system, even before I became chair, or I was even on the board, was that people only showed up if it directly impacted their child, or their child was doing something like a project or a concert or something like that. Well, the time is now where it's affecting what's on the table, or what has been on the table, is affecting everyone in this room. It's affecting everyone who's not in this room. And it's important to get that message out to everybody in every language so that we bring up the community support that's needed to fund the schools where they need to be. That's my opening comment. We'll turn it over to other board members who wish to speak. Mr. Tabersack.
As a chair of the policy committee, I'm obviously very disappointed that we're putting the high school graduation requirements and curriculum changes on hold, since the policy committee did pass a policy increasing the amount of credits for graduation by, I guess, from at least 5 whole credits. And also focusing on mathematics and English to upgrade, so students would have requirements to meet at least a community college entrance. I believe the policy committee will have to do some addressing to this. I apologize to those of you who I really champion this to, okay, that we have to put it on hold. My understanding is that for some things we may be able to inch towards it. Talking to Megan Martins, who's pretty much in charge of the curriculum at the high school, that maybe in math and English, it's where you don't have to add any faculty, where we may be able to inch towards it. I hope people keep on top of this, especially if you have high school students. I'm very disappointed, as mentioned in the Finance Committee, about the textbooks. I've been assured that there'll be class sets, and if some student doesn't have access to a computer or so forth, we'll be able to take books overnight. But when I look at the amount of students in the school system, and I look at $50,000, I don't know whether, that's wishful thinking or not. The guidance counselor at the high school, we're very proud of, by the way, the fact that the high school has increased the enrollment in all the AP courses by a significant number. And sort of an open enrollment if you have passed, but so much depends on guidance of what happens. And we're reducing the guidance. So I know we're looking at all these things, and these are the things that concern me the most because I'm most familiar with these things. But I do want to make one suggestion to our cabinet, very reluctantly, that fringe area that was shown before, one area that didn't seem to be touched, and I don't think there should be eliminations, but I think there should be reductions and put some money into textbooks or aids or whatever. That's what we have the cabinet for, to make the decisions. But I think we should share the pain, and you've heard that one recently. And I think some of the extracurricular activities should bear some of the burden. And I hope the cabinet and the finance committee looks into this.
Thank you, Mrs. Tabersack. Mrs. Leroy.
Thank you. I just wanted to piggyback on what Mr. Tabersack just said about extracurricular activities. I hate to see us cutting programs like French and Tech Ed at the middle school. I understand that extracurricular activities are very important to the students. I totally understand that. They are, however, not more important than academics. And I too would like that area looked at. I was also wondering, Sal, if I could ask you about the curriculum administrator for fine and applied arts position. You had talked about stipending that out. Is it not possible then to stipend out something like the athletic director position? And if not, could you tell me why?
Well, if you don't have an athletic program, then that's a moot point. So it depends on, when you say look at extracurricular activities, let me just give you a backdrop to that. We did do quite a research on extracurricular activity. We did it last year, we did it again this year. Those school systems that are in the city schools that had a system of assessing students for participation wind up paying for people to do the collection, and then there's not enough people to collect from. And between reduced and free lunch programs, that you really don't wind up collecting money. So to think that you collect money really doesn't happen. We've done that research twice. So, I mean, we'll look at things, and that's pay to participate. An athletic director, can it be a stipend position? I think at a school with almost 62 levels of sports, it's actually, I think, not possible. We have eligibility problems, scheduling problems, medical problems, coaches that are not certified and certified, fan issues, officials that have to come, buses, transportation. What does an athletic director do? Maybe if you had 300 or 400 kids, a small high school, typically you might see a small high school with an assistant principal / AD person. But I think in our high school, with the number of levels that we have and the competition level that we have, I don't think it's doable. I think it would be a major mistake to do that. So I don't think you can stipend it. You can pay somebody $25,000 if they want to do it. I mean, you know, we kind of, but you know, what's they going to do? They got to be a Saturday, Sunday. During the day, the person needs to be there to take phone calls, reschedule games. There's a lot there. I think we do have to figure out, in my mind, the way I settled up on this, it's not a mandated program. I call it co-curricular, not extracurricular. I think it expands, much like the world language, much of the other things in terms of what we do for youngsters in life, participating in a co-curricular activity, dance, drama, badminton, golf. That's preparation for life, as well as I look at it as a core for myself. But if the board wants to look at that, I'll look at that. But I don't want to give you the notion that if we do a pay-to-play, because I'm not willing to take away from youngsters that are looking at scholarships and activities, carte blanche. But if we go to pay-to-participate, it's going to be hard to collect all the money. So that is something we looked at. There is the possibility of doing something, but as far as a part-time athletic director, I wouldn't advise it. I wouldn't advise it.
Okay, can I ask one more question? Okay, great. We have 3 school-based health centers that are either federally funded or funded by the state, correct?
We have one at the high school, and one at Rogers Park, and one at Broadview. Yes.
Right, okay, and they're either federally or state funded, or both?
I think they're a little bit both.
Okay. And we still have additional nursing staff in those buildings in addition to the staff from the school-based health center?
We have our own, we did reduce them last year, by the way.
How many did we reduce last year? Do you remember?
Yes, Pat's sitting right here. I think we reduced one nurse at the, pardon me, Pat?
We have 1.5 nurse at each middle school.
1.5 nurse at each middle school.
Is there a state mandate for nurses at the schools?
No.
Okay. Has the board ever, or has the cabinet considered outsourcing the nursing responsibilities?
Well,
doing a cost comparison.
Let me put this diligently. We have their importance is no question. When I see kids in saving lives, I know we're not saying a lot of nurses, even the 1.5 is difficult. Our nurses come very economically and very reasonable to us. I don't think you'll find any outsourcing that would be a savings for us.
But we've already done that analysis?
Yeah, we looked at it, and Kim is there. I mean, it would be an issue in terms of that as a union, but if we were to go out, as we looked at the question of custodial, and, you know, we have, I think it's 1,500,000, where is it? Is Rodriguez here? Is it 1,500,000 square feet?
1,600,000 square.
Okay, I was close. You know, we looked at that in terms of the number of staff that we have. It would cost us more. We looked at the nurses, and it'd be we thought impossible to bring anybody in at a more of a savings for us in terms of at the level that we have. No. And there may be some confusion out there. We work separately from those clinics.
No, I understand that, but they're federally and state funded, and that's why
Yes.
I wanted to enter into discussion, if we could enter into a discussion with the Department of Health to talk about maybe expanding the scope of their responsibilities, and which might result in further cost savings for us.
I think this is Laura, and I can just add a little more to the discussion. You know, part of what the nurses that we've now reduced down to 1.5 in the middle schools are doing is they're handling our most medically fragile kids that are in the buildings. So these are people that need to do things like maintain trach tubes, need to administer medication with a level of expertise that we need to have. And what our staff is telling us is that they already are at the bare minimum of what they can absorb to get that job done. There are quite a few special needs kids that have daily needs that are being served by the skeletal staff that's there. So I think that when we're looking at whether or not there's any further place to reduce there, aside from these school-based health clinics that you're talking about for kind of daily care, we're talking about the people who are critically on the front lines with some of these health problems that we just have to maintain that staff as well. Otherwise, we wouldn't be meeting those needs.
No, I understand that. I just wanted to make sure we did a cost analysis on per diem versus permanent full-time nursing staff.
Anyone else? Mr. Janelli? Remind all the board members to speak into the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you. First, I'm not happy with what we're doing here in this particular budget. I hate to go down as being recorded at some point in time as being a board member who in the last few years has contributed to dismantling the education in Danbury. What I don't like is I don't like laying people off. I don't really feel that the Danbury school system could be called a 21st century learning institution. Not when we don't have money for books. We cannot go out and champion and try to get technical equipment or technology because we don't have staff who's able to handle it. It's really a shame. So my question to the cabinet is what I would like to see is a list of those items that are not required to be, that's not part of a required curriculum. I think we have to start with that, whether it be paying for the marching band, paying for some sports, paying for coaches. I think that's where we have to start cutting, is on the frills and trying to maintain the infrastructure of the particular quality of the education. Again, as I said earlier this evening, my fear is not only this year, but we're going to be back here next year, and we'll be back here the year after. So it's just a matter of time if things don't really get better. And unless you see a miracle coming, you're going to start seeing what we're preventing today. You're going to see it in the short time future. Also, as Irving had said, it's very important for the parents not to storm the gates of City Hall, but go up and at least make your point to the council, because they are the ones who give us the money. Just like they often tell us, we don't tell you how to spend the money, but in this particular case, they're the ones who give us the money. At least make them aware of what it's doing to the educational system here. I don't know if there are any council members here, maybe they'll see it on TV, so hopefully they'll understand what's happening, that it'll help them make a particular vote for us. But I do wish we could have that list, along not only with the items on it, but basically with some costs on there so we can evaluate. I don't like seeing, as I said, textbooks cut. I don't like seeing Head Start, because I think that makes a tremendous contribution for us. Mr. Boney talked about space. Even if he was able to find a place to move out tomorrow, this board doesn't have one penny to move anything into that. We couldn't afford to buy a pen or a pencil. So it's really a moot point. It is a moot relative to getting started for him to get out of the space for us to plan to get in there. But the point is we don't have money to do anything. Thank you very much.
Just for clarity's sake, then, Dick, are you saying that those non-mandated program, just know at the elementary, middle school, at the elementary school, kindergarten is not mandated. You do not have to have kindergarten. I'm just saying, you don't have to have kindergarten. That's it. You don't have to have nurses. You don't have to have media people. You know, and now let's just take a media person. The elementary school media persons are used to satisfy teacher contracts with a prep period. So it's not even a K-8 because the middle school has no athletics. So it's really a secondary issue. And if I'm going to look at athletics or co-curricular, then you're going to have to look at every drama, every stipend, everything that you have in order to be equitable among and throughout the high school. And we'll look at that. So they're not mandated programs. The other things are non-mandated programs, it would be hard-fetched to say because students have to take electives to graduate. Where they choose that elective, they have the autonomy to do that. What Dr. Rossi is doing is, where there are low numbers in those elective areas, then he's going to have to eliminate them. And that's what he's looking at right now. So English and mathematics and the rest will go. So I guess what you're saying to me then, to look at the non-mandated high programs, and they're basically kindergarten, and then we're not going to do that. So it's high school co-curricular activity. Is that what you? I just don't want to do a lot of work that.
No, I don't want to do a lot of work because time. You can't afford the time. But personally, I'd like to be in a position to see what is on the plate. We keep talking about having to cut and having to maintain a core curriculum. I'd like to know what the fringes are. I'm going to refer to it as fringe benefits, or what the outer core is. I certainly wouldn't make a decision on a specific issue, anything that you give us on our list, without your professional opinion on the impact of what that would be. So, as a case in point, you say kindergarten is not mandated. I certainly wouldn't make a decision to do away with it without saying, okay, Dr. Pascarella, what do you think the impact is by doing this? Are there ways that we can have some of this, just as you've done with the gifted program? It might have been the best, but we try to do a little here. So if you could provide a list so that we are in a position to pick from that and maybe able to salvage some of the personnel or salvage some of the other things and have a different set of eyes look at it, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay. Again, I'm going to say that at the middle school, areas such as world language are not required, home economics is not required. It gets to the absurdity, but I will go through that exercise to do it. I think you're really focusing on the secondary school, but I'll try to bring Bill. We'll work on a list and see what we can do.
If I can just comment on it briefly. Mr. Janelli, I think what you're talking about, there's a state statute, 1016B, and quoting the statute, it says each school system shall have a planned, systematic, and ongoing program of instruction in the 11 mandated areas. And those include things, in addition to English, math, science, social studies, etc., things like art, music, and so on and so forth. There's another provision in the state law that says, it's called the sole provider statute, and part of it says the frequency and duration of those programs shall be at the local education agency's discretion, i.e. the Board of Ed's discretion, which means, in the extreme, just to make the point, you could have an art program, and Dr. Obrey's here, and I'm not suggesting this, you could have an art program that meets once a month for 30 minutes, and that would meet the letter of the law. So what we really need to do is, in doing your due diligence, it's really looking at talking to Dr. Rossi, talking to Dr. Martins, for example, at the high school, talking to Dr. Obrey, and Dr. Rupp. We're running art programs. If we have a painting program that has 25 students in a class and a ceramics program that has 8 students in a class, technically we don't have to run the ceramics program because it costs us too much money for the number of students. Traditionally, we have run small programs because it's the right thing to do for kids. Not every youngster wants to go to a painting class. We do have kids who want to get dirty with clay. But in tough times like this, we have to make those really pernicious decisions, or at least recommendations. My point with this is we can go back, but we're already to the point where most of what we offer is required by state law. The only wiggle room in that is how much of it is required by state law. The frequency and duration is up to the local education agency, meaning the Board of Education. We can definitely do that. It's just there's not a whole lot there to look at.
The bill frequency and duration at the elementaries is defined by our teacher contract, with at least giving them a period for prep.
It's by default, and our contract requires.
So in the middle school is sort of similar. It really becomes, I think we can identify those areas, but a lot of it will focus. I don't want to kid anybody. It's going to be a secondary focus.
And Mr. Fazio.
I sit here and listen to the discussion, and I concur with a number of my colleagues up here. First, I want to thank the people that came out tonight to express their opinions about the budget. It's unfortunate that I think this room holds about 300 people. It's unfortunate that in a city with a population ballooning over 70,000, that 300 people could find the time to come out and talk about the most important budget item in the city budget, and that's the education system in this town. So I'm somewhat disappointed in all of your other fellow citizens who chose not to show up. I think it's a very sad commentary on what's going on in all levels of government in this country, not just locally. not here in the city of Danbury, but at the state level and even at the federal level. The level of participation, except coming out on election day, and even that level of participation is somewhat lacking, to say the least. It's kind of, what's happening is kind of a result of the non-participation. And I've been sitting on this board for 16 years, working to build this school system up. And now, as Mr. Ginelli says, we're sitting here talking about taking it apart, piece by piece, trying not to affect the foundation that will make it come tumbling down. That's what we're talking about. We're trying to stay on the fringes, stay in the areas that are not going to affect the largest group of students. But ultimately, whether it be this year or next year or the year after, if this trend continues, you have no foundation. It is going to come tumbling down. And while I make my living now, I'm retired, but I make my small, meager living in working in the sports field. And I would not advocate for going, as Dr. Pasquarello was talking about, going into the arena of the high school and extracurriculars and cutting the sports programs. But I guarantee you, if that was on this budget tonight and we were talking about that, you wouldn't have enough space in this room to put people. You wouldn't have enough space to put people in the auditorium of the high school. And that in itself is a sad commentary, because we're talking about here things that affect education to the small group of people that's here. We're not talking about what's affecting the greater majority. But I concur with what Mr. Tabasak said before and some of my other colleagues. We need to spread this out broader across the budget than we have been doing. And maybe we will get some more participation from the electorate in this town. And maybe the electorate in this town and the next town and the town after that will start telling the people in the state they need to do things somewhat differently than they do it now. And I've pretty much said what I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Fazio. Anyone else who hasn't yet spoken? Mr. Scazzafano.
Our biggest problem here is that we're not going to get any more money. That I know for a fact. It's never changed. Whatever the mayor's budgets come in as is what we've got. The mayor has said that we may get some draconian, I don't even know how to spell it, and I didn't even hear it before, but if we get those cuts from the state, we will really be here, and we'll need the high school for the cuts we'll make then if this happens. The biggest problem in this state, and I just happened to be looking up on the internet the other day, that Connecticut is the 4th highest state for property taxes. 4th. We're number 4 out of 50 states. We have to look at, the state has to look at, new ways of financing our schools. Some schools are, you get Richfield and you get other schools in these higher end, get all the benefits because they can afford to pay for it. Our people sometimes can't afford to pay for it. We used to be able to, but for some reason now our tax base is like leveled off. We're not a poor community, but we're not a rich community. So in the long run, we're in the middle. We can't put our heads in the sand and hide. I see this cut the textbooks to $50,000. Wait, we didn't know why put $50,000 in textbooks. It's nothing. That's nothing. And you got 7th, 8th, and 57% of 8th graders will spend an additional marking period in study hall. You know what study hall is. We've all been there. It's just a babysitting thing somewhere because they got no place else to go. There's no place else for these children to go because we had no teachers to teach them whatever elective they wanted or whatever class they wanted. We're not up here. I'm not up here, certainly not up here to cut these things. I didn't get elected to cut and whack everything, but I can't blame the city for this. I got to blame the state. I got to blame somebody that says, let's get together and make sure that our schools are funded equally and properly so every child in this state, whether it be a poor child or a rich child, gets the same education. And until then, I think we had that thing, Mr. Maloney, didn't we? Where we had that discussion with the governor one time. We were in Congress with that, didn't we? Well, anyway, we had that discussion, and nothing's happened. And until we do that, we're done. And believe me, people, believe me, we're going to have some really bad cuts in the next few weeks, especially if the state comes in. We only want, if they just come in and leave us alone, there's going to be cuts. If they cut us, it's even going to be worse.
Anyone else who hasn't yet spoken? Mrs. Cooper?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to thank everyone for coming out tonight and voicing your opinion. I certainly feel that this board and the superintendent and this cabinet has put a lot of effort in. The committee, finance committee, and those that serve on it have really worked hard to bring something to the table. But I truly, in my heart, feel, as I have sat on this board for 20 years, and as I look at what we're doing now, we are really not giving every child that comes through the door a quality education. Not with all the cuts, not with the textbooks, and not with this and not with that. And I truly believe, I was at a utilization meeting, I think it was last week. Again, Mr. Maloney was there, and we talked about preparing our students from one stage to the other. As we look at Head Start, they prepare our young minds. And then we come to kindergarten, where their minds are more prepared. And as they move on to the next stage in their life, I just don't understand how we can really chop up our schools, because I feel right now, all we really need to do is put a lock on the door and say, you stay home. Let mama do whatever she has to do. Because we are not providing anything. The money is not there. And I understand, I truly understand what we need to do as a board. But, you know, how do we get to where we need to go to make sure that every child receives a quality education?
Thank you, Mrs. Cooper. Mrs. Molinaro?
I think so. I think everything has been said. I just would like to add that every time we've cut something in our public schools, and I will take physical education as an example, that we cut way back, and now we have a war on obesity for our children. So every time we make a cut, we're doing our children a disservice. We know it, and I'm probably preaching to the choir out there, but I just want everyone to know that this board does not want to make any cuts. We have to make cuts. And the city doesn't have any money. No one wants more taxes. People are losing their homes. They can't make their payments. So these are cuts that have to be made, and we're making them with very heavy hearts. And we're trying very hard to have the least impact that we possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Molinaro. Mr. Gaylor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Listening to my colleagues speak and being the baby on the board, I came out here to make sure that the children of Danbury get what they deserve. And we cannot fight a battle by ourselves. We need everybody out here in this audience to tell a friend, to tell a friend, to tell a friend. You gotta come out. You can't wait until it's time for the budget to take and come out and get angry. You need to start coming out early. You need to start coming out often. There's a lot of faces I see out here that come to, if not every meeting, almost every meeting. This is rough. This is hard for us. It's almost tear-jerking that we have to sit here and make a decision between things that I believe our children need. We are one of the best cities in Connecticut, and yes, it's hard that the city has no money, but we need to start making noise every place we can make noise for our city and for our children. And the Board of Education cannot do it by themselves. The cabinet cannot do it by themselves. We need the support of the city. We need the support of people. And we need to fill these rooms so that when people see they know that we are interested in doing what we can do for our children, for our town, for our community, because without them, we will be nothing. So please, I implore you, I beg you, come out in droves, come out in numbers to the city council meetings, to the Board of Ed meetings, and let your thoughts be known. Mr. Maloney fights hard for us all the time. The board fights hard, the cabinet fights hard, but we can only do but so much. So I beg you, and I thank you all that came out for tonight, and I really thank all of you that stayed for the whole thing, because this is something that's very important. It needs to be heard, it needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gaylord. We need to move along. So has everyone spoken? Okay. Just want to make a closing comment. The next step from here is tomorrow night the City Council's Education Subcommittee will meet to discuss the budget proposal. I think this forum and this discussion was incredibly important. In prior years, we had the budget that the board passed. That's what the council looked at, and we get a whole series of questions and what-ifs. I think we'll be prepared to talk with the council tomorrow night. There may or may not be any more money available, but at least we'll have a coherent message as to what this $1 million increase to the board's budget will mean in terms of the reduction in quality of the services we provide. And I think we'll be able to have a more intelligent conversation with the City Council tomorrow night. So I would encourage all the board members to attend, as well as any members of the public who may be interested. And we should all be interested. So, Mr. Skyler,
Their public hearings on the 20th, I think.
there will be a public hearing on the education budget.
No,
so that's
the whole budget.
That's yeah. Tomorrow's just the education
I
subcommittee.
understand that, but most of this budget, they're going to be calling people who listen to the education part. The 20th is they're listening to it.
Right. So it's during April vacation.
That's for everybody.
So, I would encourage you all to look at the city's website and make sure you don't miss any meetings. Mr. Taverzani.
7:15, City Council Hall, the third floor. Okay, if I didn't catch the time, that's what I just mentioned. It's okay?
Thank you, Mr. Taverzani. So we encourage you all to attend, and there are dire times ahead, but I just want to acknowledge the work of the cabinet, Dr. Pasquarello, the staff, and all of our employees for pitching in for what they do on a day-to-day basis. We're all doing more with less, and that's going to continue to take place, but we have the right people, I think, in place to lead us to where we need to go. So we just need to keep pushing. Mr. Gianni?
One thing you should be okay. I just want you to understand something also, that the board also, in addition to trying to do the best with what we have, we are reaching out to the community, the business community in the city of Danbury, as well as the parents and everybody else who makes up what we refer to generally as the community. We had a meeting the other morning with several business leaders, and we have a list of items on that list. And one of those items on that list, I think, is $250,000 that we're asking for donations of either the product or money for a paper. So we're actually reaching out for in-kind services to supplement our shortfalls. We're reaching out for financial services to supplement our shortfall. So we are thinking outside of the box. We have looked at other districts. There's conceptually had conversations with Dr. Pasquarello and Dr. Glass about looking at other districts to share some items with. I mean, I don't know what, but I'm sure every district is in the same bind as we are, so there has to be some duplications of services, and maybe there's a way that we can take advantage of that. As Mrs. Cooper said, one of the most important things that at least you should bring away from this meeting is there is the degradation in the quality of education to your child. That's a fact. When a teacher has to stand in a room with 25 kids, or whatever it is in the kindergarten kids, and they have a range of those that need help to those that are gifted, there are several teachers that may be able to teach to that group, but by and large, over the course of time, I think it's a phenomenal strain, and I'm sure there are many teachers that aren't that gifted who are going to be able to keep everybody in check. So somebody along the way is going to be suffering, and the way the state is mandating things to us. Test scores are important because they want to go to the achievement gap. So a lot of emphasis is going to be helping out those that are not a higher end of the academic spectrum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Janelli.
Chairman, I want to call the board's attention to number 8 in this document. Number 8 reads, board members are permitted to discuss any matter except district business with each other, whether in person or by electronic means, regardless of the number of members participating in the discussion. So I take that to mean then that when the roof was leaking at Danbury High School in the gymnasium about a month ago, and I happened to be attending a basketball game, I would not be able to have a conversation with you, Mr. Chairman, about why the roof was leaking at Danbury High School in the middle of a basketball game, because I would be prohibited from doing that according to this document. So therefore, I move to remove item 8